Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.rent. I'm Justin Lewis,
And I'm Tanner Wayland.
and we are here to help you tell better stories for yourself and your players as you dungeon master sessions of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. We'd like to give you some quick announcements. We actually have one before the show, and then after the show, if you want to stick around, we have some more announcements then as well. But first, let's talk about this. Tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, critting, sarcasm, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. Awesome. With that out of the way, we can get into today's show.
Hello, and welcome to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.rent. My name is Tanner Wayland, and together we're going to learn about how to be the best DMs we can for our players and for ourselves. And to that point, today this episode is coming out on Thanksgiving, and I wanted to focus on something that, I don't think is talked about enough, and that's the importance of positivity in being a DM. So think about it this way. There's a lot of great points about being a DM, and being a DM is so fun, and D&D is so fun, right? And yet I find that I'm sometimes focusing so much on the negative parts of it. Like, for example, it's like, okay, maybe I was planning on having a really fun session, but there were a couple difficult players, or players who just were distracting or didn't get involved in the ways I wanted, right? Other times, speaking of players again, difficulty with scheduling. It gets really frustrating when you're like, hey, I've got this adventure prepped, this session, and the players are like, oh, I've got something that night. Oh, Wednesday's bad for me too. Let's just postpone in another couple weeks, right? That can be really frustrating. And there's a slew of other things, right? Like you have people complaining about being the forever DM, right? You have people who complain about the prep, and I've been there. That's been me, right? You have people who, and this is also me, where especially when I was getting started out, and I was a college student without much extra money, right? Not that I have that much more now, but I was really frustrated that there were so many tools and potential helps out there, but they just cost money. And with time, I just found that being a DM at certain points has been more of a burden than an actual benefit in my life, right? And I just really want to emphasize today that that's going to burn you out. If you find that regularly you are feeling apprehensive about your next session, or even like, and think about this for newer DMs who haven't even started that first campaign. Now, maybe you're just feeling super apprehensive and scared and anxious, and a lot of these kind of negative emotions, and it's kind of actually hindering you from finding a group to start playing, right? I've been there, and I'm saying that that's a good way to fall out of love with this hobby that's honestly super fun, right? And so let's flip the script a little bit. And I think many of you probably know this. Being positive, it's a choice. It's very much a choice. And of course, some people it's an easier choice because they've got more going for them. But regardless, You could have someone who has the most in the world and they could just be super negative and no one likes being around them, versus the other side where, you know, if someone just makes the best of the situation or at least focuses on the positive parts, then you're going to have just such a positive experience as a DM. So, and I think that you want that, right? I think we all want to stick with this hobby for a long, long time. We want to do 1,000 adventures. We want to hang out with our friends a bunch while leading them down dark and dangerous and exciting roads in D&D. And so let's think about some of those negative points I brought up earlier and just kind of flip the script, right? Instead of thinking about how difficult your players are, think about how grateful you are that you know the person, or that the person was willing to join in the first place, right? And that they still trust you. Because I can guarantee you, if this session you were feeling like, oh, they were being kind of difficult for me to direct, to lead, to help, whatever it is. I mean, the fact that they were there at all is kind of great, right? And I'm sure that this isn't the first time they felt, or that you felt that they've been difficult, and yet they stuck around despite the fact that you have a hard time dealing with them as players. So that's a blessing in and of itself, right? And even with scheduling, yeah, it can be very difficult to schedule things. But then the moment that someone does, that people do make time, you know that the people who made time for that, those are real friends, right? They took time out of their day, and they wanted to spend it with you, and they trusted the story you were going to make. So focus on that, right? Focus on that rather than the difficulty of getting it all set up in the first place. And in terms of like taking up DMing, taking up a lot of your time with the prep and also just the sessions in and of themselves. First off, you are the one that controls how long you run sessions for and how much time you spend prepping. But mostly, just think about it's like, hey, yeah, it takes some prep, but isn't it wonderful that you get to make stories and be creative, and that you get to kind of brainstorm, or rather you get alpha readers, or testers for your imagination and your hard work, who aren't going to tear you a new one, right? Who aren't going to throw it in your face and be like, "Oh, this is really subpar," because they're your friends, because you got them together, and because even if they might secretly think that like, "Oh, this isn't their best session," as a DM, they're not going to throw it in your face, right? In the same way that a lot of other creative endeavors, or hard work that we do will get criticized, right? In D&D and as a DM, you have such a wonderful playground to, to spend as much time preparing or as little time preparing as you want, and still get people who will listen and appreciate that, right? That's just a wonderful thing. And if you do fail, like you plan all this stuff and something goes awry and you're like, oh, well, that didn't work, well, what the heck, then guess what, there's no real consequences. You can get feedback from the players, and they'll be willing to do that without ghosting you, right? In many cases, and that's just, it's a wonderful situation. In fact, I feel like the term forever DM, that's a very negative term in general, because it's like, hey, isn't that great that your party sees you as capable enough to continuously, week after week or month after month, like put out a quality story? Isn't that wonderful that they think that you have something worth sharing, and that you have the skills to back it up? I think it is, because a lot of times I forget that. I forget that there's a good amount of trust, and that I should like lean on that to feel the confidence, right? And to appreciate that, like, hey, maybe it feels like I never get to be a player, but at the very least, it shows that I've got, you know, people appreciate my ability to tell stories, uh, certainly enough that they love coming back week after week. So focus on that, right? And also focus on, the relationship you have with the players. And if you feel like you're really getting burned out, then, appreciate and utilize that relationship to be like, hey, could I have a break? Could I get a few weeks or a couple months where you guys are running it for a little bit? We do a side quest, and I just want a little bit of a break. And guess what? I would argue that many of your players, while they might not feel ready immediately, if you pitch it well, and if you're like, hey, I would really appreciate this, a lot of them would step up, right? They'd be like, okay, give me some time to prepare, and then you've got a few months off. That's one of the great things about D&D in general, that I really hope that we don't forget, that it is at its core uh, fulfilling two things. One, it's a place to tell stories, which I think all of us want more of in general. And two, it's a place to build and strengthen relationships, right? You get to be cooperatively creative. You get to laugh together. You get to explore and experience new things together. And while, if you're too familiar with D&D, or if you just focus on kind of the parts that cause abrasion, like the lack of tools that you have or the lack of resources, then you'll forget that, like, hey, this is actually a very simple game. The rule set is out there. It's common knowledge. You don't need all the maps, the editors, the everything, right, in order to have that fun game. There's so many free tools out there, and even without those, theater of the mind has always been a fun way to play. So just really, if I could get anything across today, it's, on Thanksgiving, think about the positives, right? Find reasons to be thankful rather than to be stressed out or exhausted. And I think it's going to do a couple things. One, it's going to make it so that week after week, being a D&D player or a DM will be an uplift, like a very positive uplift in your life, right? And second, it's going to make a lot of better DMs, because if you have positivity, your players are going to feel that. They're not going to feel any frustration from you, and they're going to, reciprocate, and you're going to have wonderful sessions. And you're also going to improve a lot more, right? Because I think one of the saddest things is when people kind of stop being a DM because they just get burnt out, because they don't see the positive anymore, and then we kind of lose out on seeing what kind of DMs they could be in the future, right? So take that time before a session. If you're stressing out, just stop and start thinking about, like, oh, why am I stressed? Okay, let's flip the script. Okay, I'm stressed about Tommy, who, the orc barbarian who basically tries to kill all my NPCs. Uh, how about instead, I'm grateful for Bob, the guy that's playing Tommy, and that Bob took time to come over to my house, and I'm grateful for, his commitment to the character, uh, and also on top of that, I'm grateful that I have the chance to actually try and solve this issue. There's very few issues, especially in something as low stakes as D&D. There's very few issues that can't be resolved, and that's just an ultimate thing to be grateful for, and thankful for. Uh, so I hope that this next week, month, year, you'll really take that to heart and try and make that. It's not quite. I'm not asking you to do a gratitude journal about D&D, but I'm asking you to at least put aside some time here and there when you notice yourself spiraling a little bit into negativity, to just acknowledge the positives, and that's going to mean, that's going to make a world of difference for you. Um, so I hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, a wonderful weekend, and until next time, let's roll initiative.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First,
did you ever fall in love with the library as a kid? It was a place where you could experience 1,000 stories without having to buy 1,000 books. That is what Monsters.rent can do for your D&D campaign. You can rent and swap out as many quality miniature monsters and creatures for your D&D party as you could ever want, without having to buy them. You can rescue villagers from a kobold camp, or lead your party through the fighting forest, or many more adventures. We're coming out with new bundles all the time. Just sign up for our subscription to get access to your own personal library of minis. Go to monsters.rent to find out more. That's the website. Monsters, with an S, .rent. Get your library pass to a world of minis today.
we also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Stardust and Dragons. I'm going to let one of the cast of Stardust and Dragons, Christian Hatcher, and his crew tell you a little bit more about it.
This August, a new adventure podcast is coming to a platform near you, filled with action,
Shoot one of the two of them. We can't keep taking hits like that.
drama,
Everything that she's been doing, everything she's going to do, finally sets in.
and stardust.
Help! Help! Someone, please!
Find out more about this epic odyssey at stardustanddragons.com, where adventure awaits in the stars.
That's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, we'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.